Meet the Lot, native token of Lukki Exchange and the most potential tool for investing this year. Trade now on P2B, B2B and Lukki.io.
Next panel, we have a really interesting bunch of people doing all kinds of different real-world applications of blockchain. On my left, we have Anastasia Andrianova. She's the founder and CEO of Acropolis Decentralized. She's going to be looking at reforming pensions infrastructure. We have John Monarch, who's the founder of ShipChain. He's a logistics background and is looking at how blockchain can revolutionize the supply chain. Then we have Nikolaj Martyniuk, who's the co-founder and CEO of WePower Network. I hope I said that correctly in terms of pronouncing your name, looking at how we can trade energy more efficiently and effectively. And last but by no means least, on the end we have Roger Henney, who's the co-founder and CEO of Datum Foundation, who's looking at how we can use blockchain to better manage big data, which is probably one of the big questions of our current internet era. So delighted to welcome all the panel. I'm going to ask them each to just do a quick intro of themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what the applications are they're working on and really how blockchain helps to address existing business problems that couldn't be solved before, but maybe the properties of blockchain are allowing us to now solve those entrenched problems in new ways. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Anastasia first. Is it working?
Hello.
Yes,
Hi.
It works.
Hi, thanks, Helen. My name is Anna. My background is in private equity and fund management. We started looking at the pension sector and specifically at how things can be improved in February this year through my work with two large pension schemes. Somebody who's been on the buy side for most of my career, it was very apparent to me that the use case is just absolutely obvious. The removal of the necessary costs, the transparency, and ultimately the ability to empower individuals, to empower users by removing a whole range of intermediaries was something that appealed straight away. And that's really was a trigger for me to start looking into the technology and starting developing a concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it hard to move from sort of traditional finance into the blockchain world because you had a career previously in financial services, you know, a nice job, nice paycheck, and now you're in this startup land where everything's a bit more risky?
I've always had high appetite for risk. I'm fully committed to this sector right now. Basically, all my time is devoted to the blockchain sector. Ultimately, it's all about, we have finite presence here, right? You know, you can either choose to make a difference or you can stay in a safe job. For me, the choice was clear.
It'd be boring if we did the same thing forever, right?
Yeah, yes, I'm not for boring, no. And ultimately, it's a huge problem that nobody's addressing right now. The solution is impossible in the confines of the current system. I mean, the mathematics simply doesn't add up. I find myself in a situation where I could talk to the boards of pension funds, to the executive chairman of pension funds about what was very obvious to me is that a new solution has to be engineered, and I focused on bringing together the smartest people from the blockchain universe, from the finance community to start working on that.
Thank you so much.
Thank
John,
you.
I mean, when it comes to shipping and logistics, the supply chain is one of the sort of best use cases that people say for blockchain, since it ticks all the boxes of what a good use case for the blockchain is. So how do you find sort of quite traditional industry like shipping and freight comes to view blockchain as a newcomer on the block?
They really see it as a very strong up-and-coming technology. It's a very old industry is some of the problems with it, though. So you have some pushback a little bit from the industry in general, being a nearly $10 trillion a year industry globally and about 10% of the United States GDP. But at the same time, you have most people are very interested in looking at it from a perspective of this is going to solve all of the, not all of, but many of the largest problems that the industry faces, including visibility into track and trace, custody problems, and things of that nature.
And we talked a little bit yesterday, just over dinner, about the customs issue, also that there's a lot of paperwork and regulatory kind of bump involved in shipping and logistics. So is that something that you're also looking into?
It is, and involving the regulators in the process with shipping and logistics is very important, especially in this blockchain world. So involving regulators in that, giving them access to private keys to shipments that require their approval, certain things that are dangerous goods, things that are crossing borders, and of that nature.
And turning to Nick, I mean, the energy sector is one area where maybe proof of concepts in blockchain is sort of advancing faster than some other sectors. So tell us more about what you're doing and how you think blockchain is changing the game in the marketplace.
So us and our team, we are in energy business for a long time. So I'm developing renewable energy projects for the past 10 years. And the team that joined us on this WePower project is basically, they've been in energy business, but on the side of the development of energy grids, also around 10 years. So energy business today, it's shifting. It's becoming more decentralized in such a way that we started to use more renewable energy. This means the change is happening to how energy is produced. We have less of traditional energy capacities now that we're producing energy out of steam, and we're switching to 100% renewable energy. So this is the long goal for everybody to become as carbon neutral as possible. But it involves changing the way how we produce energy and how it is being delivered to people. So while working and developing renewable energy projects, especially for the past year and a half, the investment in the sector has dropped a bit. It happened because we have less subsidies. On one side, it's a good thing that subsidies are going away and we can compete in an open market. But at the same time, we need more financing to develop more projects. And it is logical that because all of us are the end users of energy, why not buy directly from the producer? So what our platform allows people to do is basically to invest directly in the project they like and buy energy from it, and the energy will be delivered to you. If we're not in the country where you're buying, let's say, smart contract from, then you can basically sell it on the marketplace, and somebody else will get the energy. This is the way a decentralized system works, and it's becoming more and more applicable. So energy is a hard business. It's also a very old business, and it's really hard to change it. So the first way how to change it and optimize it is basically bring the transaction volumes up. This is the first thing we're trying to build. So there will be enough transactions to actually enable the peer-to-peer trading between people.
So you'll have both a kind of consumer application, but also a kind of enterprise. Are you aiming at business-to-business market and consumer market?
Yeah, so basically anybody can buy energy. So we are working in the very beginning with big energy developers to bring the volumes up. Anybody can buy this energy. It can be a person to buy energy directly from the consumer at a cheaper price, in such a way giving him financing to construct the plant. And when it's there, the energy will be delivered to you.
Thank you. And Roger, finally on the end of the row. Sorry to leave you till last, but I'm interested to hear how you think blockchain can help us managing the problem of big data.
Yeah, so we are building a decentralized database for structured data. And the problem we're tackling is that many of these large companies, Google, Facebook, Uber, Equifax, are building these large data silos, and they're very bad at actually safeguarding your data. So Uber just made an announcement a few weeks ago. They lost 57 million user records. Equifax lost 143 million every second Americans' personal data. And the problem is that this data is not encrypted individually to you. So what we're doing with Datum is providing this data storage infrastructure where each of your personal data records are encrypted with your own private key. And we use a technology called proxy re-encryption, which allows to safely share and sell this data. So the network can basically transform the encrypted data, but never decrypt it itself. And so what we're really aiming to do is help individuals claim back their data ownership. So we actually built a calculator. You can go to calc.datum.org. And we looked at 25 popular online services and how much they're actually making of your data. And the figure we came up to is about $2,000 a month. And you can read on our methodology on our website. And so we are proposing a solution where developers can basically securely store your personal data, still have delegated access, but you're ultimately in control of this data. And so in the European Union next year, they're introducing something called GDPR. It's a new legislation that returns some rights to individuals, for example, the right to have your data deleted. But we really are proposing a solution that goes a step further. With Datum, you're really the actual owner of that data, and we think that's the future.
Yeah, it's a fundamental point. Also, when it comes to healthcare, we don't have a healthcare person on the panel, but there are a lot of people working in the healthcare sector on how to improve ownership of healthcare data so that we can all hopefully be owners of our own healthcare information, or at least share healthcare information among professionals, which would improve the quality of care. So I'm sort of interested to know what level of evolution your projects are all at. I mean, maybe we can go back down this way for fairness. So since we're into both fair and distributed systems, where have you got to in terms of where your projects got to and funding and rolling it out?
Yeah, so we just finished our fundraising, and so before Christmas we're launching the first real data trade. So we've built a pretty large community of crypto enthusiasts, and we're basically allowing them to, for the first time, sell their personal data. So we're starting with a use case where they can sell their email. We won't give their email out, but we'll allow other companies that are interested to reach out to our community to reach those users. And the users are rewarded, are earning our tokens in reward for that. And so this really empowers for the first time the individuals to actually start making money of what is theirs.
That's one of the reasons I like real-world examples, because it gets people interested. You know, if you talk to people about blockchain in sort of theoretical terms, you know, my kids sort of say to me, oh, blockchain, 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 like, why are you going on about blockchain? You know, but then you say to somebody, oh, well, you could monetize your own data and not give it away to search engines or social media sites, or you can own your own healthcare data, or you can trade your excess energy from your solar panels. People start to get really interested in what the real-world applications actually mean. So I'm glad to hear that you're starting to be able to roll that out. Turn to you, Nick.
Yeah, so on our side, we've built a minimum viable product some time ago. We're still in the fundraising process. We have a partnership with the transmission systems operator, which we want to build. After that, we're moving to our first target market, which is Spain. We have a pipeline of projects there with our partners. This will allow us to test everything, how the platform works before scaling up the product.
So we're in our early stages still. We have tracking and tracing on smart contracts. We have a pilot partnership with Purdue Farms. They're about a $9 to $10 billion a year company in the United States and around the world that does agricultural business, chicken, grain, things like that. So a lot of their headaches have been around the Food Safety Modernization Act in the United States, which has recently been becoming much more strict on a lot of these companies. So what they need is to have that availability of a unified tracking system to show, including an IoT type of setup where, okay, it was this temperature in the trailer, it stored this goods prior, and we know exactly every bit of information that came from that shipment. So we start that partnership with them in January and are going to be working on their internal fleet of trucks and rail cars as well.
Exciting times for you then. Anastasia?
So we started, the concept was developed in August. We've done an angel round. So I combined the equity round with the token round from a few strategic investors. We are finalizing our POC and alpha right now, and in talks with several funds regarding the seed round. Yeah.
And what do the panel think are the key kind of implementation challenges? Because one of the problems for startups is always, to get the first customer. Once you've got one customer, you can get two. Once you've got two, you can get four, and so on, and it spirals out. But getting that first customer when you're working in a cutting-edge technology where people don't really either understand what you do, so first you have to educate your customer that they actually want what you're trying to sell them, and then you have to actually close the deal. So how do people manage that, and what are the other kind of implement challenges you see coming down the pike, other than just growing the company, but the practical challenges of implementing blockchain projects?
So I'll take that. Yeah, sure. So on our side, the focus is twofold. It's individual user base, so people, and the institutional user base. For the institutions, the engagement process is very much through talks, through workshops, through discussions. They have to see it's very important to maintain the development of the individual user solution, simply because it's only through seeing that they can be disintermediated that institutions will actually sit up and listen. So yes, outreach, education, workshops is a very, very big part of that. And ultimately, designing an exceptionally user-friendly product is a huge part of our focus. And as I'm sure everybody in this room is aware, good UX, UI is worth its money multiple times over, especially in crypto.
And you know, the thing you show doesn't necessarily even have to work, right? So I went to a workshop once about a real-world implementation of a multi-party blockchain project, and they said, you know, we created a sort of app. It wasn't really real, it didn't really work, but it looked like the end product that we were planning to create.
Yeah, just a mock-up.
Yeah, and that's what sold the project, that people can see, you know, something on their smartphone that they could use, even if it works or not, but they get the idea.
I agree. It's very important to move from a level of abstraction to showing something. And yeah, it can be just...
So demonstration project.
Because from the top-down perspective, you have to look at these major corporations, these fleet owners, these retailers, producers, manufacturers, et cetera. But the bottom-up approach, and we're looking at, of course, multimodal, so everything from air, ocean, rail, trucking. But there's a lot of independent actors in the ecosystem. So for instance, in the United States alone, trucking is an $800 billion a year industry. There are 350,000 independent owner-operators that own their vehicles and drive as an independent company, out of a total 4 million truckers in the US. So these people basically set their own business, and you have to work with them to actually make them want to join the ecosystem as well. So that's where we're looking at a rewards program for these drivers and these stakeholders in the ecosystem.
And I guess if you have kind of advocates and evangelists in your community, you don't have to then do all the education yourself. You're also building a wider community that can educate others and spread the whole project out.
Exactly, and word spreads very quickly among these drivers, so it's very helpful.
They have to do something while they're driving, right? They chat to each other. Nick.
So, as I mentioned before, energy is a very old business. So, to do well here, you have to engage the companies that are operating the distribution systems and transmission systems. In our case, we decided to go this way straight away. We partnered with a transmission systems operator that has a very good infrastructure already in place, and because we not only want to solve the problem of the renewable energy sector, but we want to make it a scalable solution to work in more or less every country in the world. So systems operate in a similar way. They have some nuances in one country to another, but the principles are there for a very long time and they stay constant. So we partnered up with an Estonian company and started working on how we can not only work on the solution, what we provide to the customers that want to buy cheaper green energy and develop more renewable energy projects, but also how can we help the grid to do this transition from 24% renewable energy today to 100% in the future. So it requires work with them, and if you don't partner with them, basically it will be a very limited implementation. You could work out the microgrids, that will work fine in small communities, but if you want to provide a big, robust solution for the future, you have to partner up with them. And in our case, we started working with one, and now more and more companies approach us to start working on the solution that can be implemented with other distribution and transmission systems operators as well.
So in your industry, it's partly about kind of intra-industry partnership building and collaboration, and also creating some kind of standards maybe for allowing people to use your platform and to work together. Yeah, you have to, it's for many years, there was a very closed business, energy, and only now it's opening up. It started opening up because decentralization were in the field. The partners that we have in Spain now, they are developing a pipeline of 1 gigawatt, which would, in Spain, for example, would power 450,000 households for a year. So if you want to build a big solution, you have to work directly with them and build the partnerships to have them in place. So the project that you're working on, it could be very great that you'll have a chance to implement it fully. And Roger, in terms of your data solutions, I mean, you talked about GDPR, which was interesting. So there's various regulations in different countries about what data can be held about you. And in some senses, that might even drive a market for you, you know, because blockchain might be a good solution to the problem of that type of regulation, because it's very hard for companies at the moment to actually manage how to implement things like the GDPR regulations.
Yeah, so first of all, for us, there are some real-world problems, and we try to make a mass-market solution, and usability is really key. But just a very simple example, for a user to get onboarded, if the user needs to call a smart contract function in your Ethereum token or contract, he basically needs to have Ethereum. He needs to pay the transaction cost in gas. And so it's not really feasible to, at the moment, expect the mass market customer to go out there and get himself some Ethereum, right? Fiat to crypto is still pretty broken. So there's some fundamental problems like that. There's transactions per second. On Ethereum, it's really not very fast. There's various blockchains that propose faster transactions, but some of them are sacrificing decentralization, so they're adding some centralized elements. And so I think that really brings me to this big point. If you use blockchain, the reason to decentralize must really be the most critical aspect of the whole system, because blockchain is actually a kind of horrible development environment. You can do everything almost much better on a centralized system. So if there is really no reason, no super important aspect why you need to have a decentralized systems, users will simply not want to put up with the usability shortcomings that we currently have. And so yeah, I look forward to the next year and see what Ethereum comes up with and which of these alternative blockchains become mature enough and which ones find a real decentralized solution to scaling transactions, for example.
So it's amazing. Everyone's identified a different problem. So we should always be really nice to people running startups because they're not just trying to run a business, they're also trying to educate people, build a community, build industry standards, deal with technical problems, a whole host of other challenges that go around building up a company in such a kind of cutting-edge new technology. We have about 5 or 6 minutes for questions, so I'd love to get a few questions from the floor. I'm going to try and take one from this side because I think I favoured this side earlier on. So if someone has a question over this side of the room, then feel free. I think someone's standing up there looking for a mic. Be interesting also to hear people's views on what other industries are moving ahead fast in terms of real-world applications, because we have just a few examples here, but there are also other industries that are now starting to move forward. So feel free to comment on that as well as part of the Q&A. Do we have a mic coming?
Please have me mic.
If you can say where you're from as well, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Gangadhar, working for a startup in India. To the customs officials for the private keys of the shipments. I didn't really understand how that works. Why would they need the private keys and how that works in your product flow?
So the information such as the bill of lading will be stored actually within the smart contract. Any sort of information that might be pertinent for those customs officials to have, such as the HST classification for import tariffs, what the good is itself, if there's any sort of toxic paperwork that needs to be filed and things of that nature to just streamline the paperwork essentially.
Next question. Looking for hands up. You see any hands up? I can't see anyone. Wait. Oh yeah, at the back there, lady in the white top.
This is for
man, sorry. I see you had long hair.
Just out of curiosity, are you experiencing where you're at now? Are you getting more pushback from the renewable industry energy sector or from the fossil fuel energy sector?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's a push against renewables anymore. There will always be a conflict for a period of time, but those countries that already can produce renewable energy at the market price, they're competing very heavily with traditional power. In some countries, you can actually produce renewables much cheaper than electricity or heat from gas. So there might be a push from their side to the governments not to allow more renewable energy. But everybody understands that from a financial point of view, you already cannot stop it. And if you are in a country where you can produce cheaper energy from solar, from wind and hydro, you'll definitely go that way. And the old system will be there for some time to support the development of renewables as well. But it will go away eventually.
Anyone else? I think there's one at the back in the middle there.
Hi, my name is Faisal Chowdhury. I'm from Bangladesh, and I have a question regarding the system implementation itself. Given that the technology is really dependent on the computing power, etc., can you see a scenario when this whole system can collapse?
It's a question to who?
Well, I mean, some chains are moving to proof of stake that reduces the energy consumption, but it's an interesting point. I forgot the exact number, but there was some comparison how much electricity is actually used by Bitcoin and Ethereum at the moment, and it's pretty excessive if you think what is being done with it. So no, I don't think it will collapse. So moving to proof of stake, reduces energy consumption, and I'm sure there's going to be other solutions in the future.
I think for the last question, I'm going to take the moderator's privilege and just ask each of the panelists to mention a sector that's not already been mentioned where they think there's some interesting real-world applications of blockchain going on outside of the ones we've already had on the panel. Do you have any thoughts on that, Anastasia? Any particular sector you see sort of moving ahead?
I mean, healthcare is very interesting. Huge issues.
Yeah.
Just absolutely enormous issues.
Management of data in healthcare is very controversial. But.
Absolutely. And this is where also data is very interesting, and with GDPR coming in, it's just a layer of privacy and data challenges. But
I mean, naturally, both governments and patients are nervous about the idea of giving up ownership of their data or sharing their data in the correct way with the correct permissions.
Yeah, to be honest, I think a lot of the battle has been lost already.
Day of conferences. What about you, John? Do you see other sectors moving ahead?
There's a couple actually I really like to see, and one is in oil and gas. So not just for like energy, but things like that, but tracking everything from well to refinery to the IoT play of figuring out how much was produced, paraffins and things like that. But also mining and making sure that you're not mining conflict minerals in a certain area, and that these conflict minerals aren't making it into a supply chain.
Well, I would say, it's, as you mentioned, basically, there are some solutions that are better solved with centralized databases, and you cannot solve everything with blockchain here. Applications like healthcare, they're very important and interesting, but some additional technology has to be developed fully for people to trust it, and we perfectly understand that we want to control our data, and if I'm giving the information to one doctor, I want to keep it private and give access only when I wish to do it. So basically the information privacy is the first thing I would like to be delivered to the end.
Yeah, I think managing a lot of that system. And Roger, finally.
Yeah, so for me it's actually the integration of all these thousands of tokens. I think that's key to real-world usage next year, and that requires a few key components. It requires decentralized exchanges, it requires things like MetaMask, but maybe in an even more usable way, and that's what I'm looking forward next year to see, can this problem be solved? How can we bring all these tokens together? Because realistically, none of us is going to use 100 tokens to do different things next year. So tokens really are probably going to work in the background in a transparent way, and we need to have interfaces that are on a higher stack on the front end to bring all of this together and exchange tokens seamlessly across projects.
Well, that's a great point, and thank you for making it, because it leads into my final panel of the day. So I'm going to come back to that later on in the afternoon when we go on to the panel about trading and investing in ICOs. But thank you so much to all of my panel. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question, I'm sure they're going to be around for the rest of the afternoon. So just falls me to thank Anastasia, John, Nick, and Roger for an excellent discussion, and thank all of you for your excellent questions as well.